Hello Anjali,
Hi,
welcome to ENLITE.
thank you so much.
And first of all, congratulations, on your outstanding success in civil service exam.
Thanks again.
You've made us proud and equally happy. So, why don't you tell us something about your background?
So, I hail from Kozhikode, Kerala,
Okay.
as in Bepur. I have a mom, younger sister, and dad at home.
Okay.
So, I graduated from National Institute of Technology, Calicut in 2014 as an Electronics and Communication graduate, and then I got placed in my first interview, and then I went ahead to work at Deloitte Consulting. So
Okay.
it's I think during that time, that transition, that preparation also started.
So that was when civil services preparation started.
Yes.
So was it a childhood dream or something that you wanted to pursue after graduation?
I have had it in mind for a while, but then I think my dreams kind of evolved. I wanted to become a scientist and then an astronaut and all kinds of
Okay.
things in between. But eventually, when I started working, I started thinking of why do I work? What is my motivation to work? So then
Okay.
it led me to civil services eventually, and it went back to my dream in my 7th standard. So
Okay. So now coming to the exam as such, civil service exam as such is unique for the fact that it's a year-long process.
True.
And there are 3 different types of exams which are all together, they belong to 3 different genres. So there is prelims, mains and interview.
yes.
So how was your tryst with prelims?
My tryst with prelims has been, to say the least, very lengthy and also tedious.
Okay.
So, when people assume that I cleared it in one shot in my third attempt and got a 26th rank,
Okay.
what they do not see is the struggle and the perseverance and the failures that went behind the third attempt of success.
Okay.
So, the first time I gave prelims was in 2015. I had very less preparation and I just wanted to give it a shot. And then I had 30 marks margin between the cutoff and myself. So then I was like, okay, maybe if I cover a little more, I might be able to do better. And then I gave one more attempt in 2016. I prepared for almost 6 months. This is after work. I was working at this time, and I used to come home and study for like 3 or 4 hours every single day. And I thought it'll clear. I thought it'll work out, but it did not. And I missed the cutoff for 0.66 marks, and that really kind of messed with my self-esteem. As in, a lot of things went down the hill. So it's during that time that I decided that I had a confusion of whether to think of higher studies. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, maybe I'm not meant for this. So all these questions started coming up. And I went home and was telling my mom, so these B schools were inviting and I had like cleared a few and stuff. So my mom said, anyway you started something, why don't you like stick through and see what happens to yourself. You have some time, you're 24-year-old. So you have a little more time to kind of explore different things. So if this is what you really want to do, try sticking through it. And I went by her advice and my dad's advice and gave my third attempt. I doubled my effort in the sense that I did a lot more test papers than before, and fortunately I just made it through the cutoff probably. The marks are not out yet, but that's what I believe. I was never good at prelims.
Okay. So, so from what you said, I understand that you managed your preparation along with work.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
that in itself is a challenge. So how did you get through that?
Honestly speaking, I think that every candidate has 2 choices. One is to work and study, where time is a challenge, right? The other is to do the studies full time, where the pressure is a challenge in itself. So for me, managing time and putting more effort was not difficult. For me, what was difficult was the anxiety and the pressure that I am not good at dealing with in the end. So I chose to go by a method where I just had to work hard to kind of make do for the work that I was doing in the day. I would come home and stay longer and stay up at night to finish my studies and then sleep. But a lot of people do the other way around. So it's really a personal choice. But I think fundamentally in India we are allowed to kind of take help from our parents and a lot of people. And then continue our preparations, and a lot of people are supportive. My parents are also supportive. I just chose not to do it.
Okay. So after prelims, you resigned your job.
No, I did not. I am still working, by the way.
Okay.
So, yeah, I am yet to give my resignation.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
So, what happened is probably also because of the nature of my work, and my work allowed me to kind of move around within the firm, and I figured out something that I really like. So, I think when you're doing something really like in your daytime, and you think it is adding value somewhere or the other, right? You're not as stressed as otherwise. So I used to enjoy my work in the day, and I used to have really good friends in office. So my daytime and at work was the fun time.
Okay.
And then when I would go home, I would go into a very serious mode, and like after 10 p.m. I would start my studies and like stay up till 3 or 4.
Oh,
because I've always stayed up till 3 or 4 and slept in the morning. So I'd continue doing that. The only difference was that daytime I had fun. At home I had to completely switch over to a completely different person who does not like check the phone and waste time. And so that time I really did study. But I think my friends during work and otherwise also got me through this.
okay. So what happened after you cleared prelims in 2017? What was your next step?
My step was again, what happened in 2016 was just a precursor to the story. So I was thinking that earlier I had taught in a place in Trivandrum, in a small children's orphanage kind of place. So I was thinking maybe I should go like explore that place, like give some more work there, and then take like a leave or something and take work from home. But that did not pan out in 2016. That was the plan, and then life happened and like my plans failed. So 2017 I thought anyway I had like a solid plan, so why not see what happens when I do that. So I took that leave, I went to that place, and then I committed for a few hours of a day to teach there. So because of that I also got leave from my work, because my work allows to do that. And then I figured out a place in Trivandrum where I found basically this place which is ENLITE. I was led into this place by a friend, Akhil Sanal Kumar, who cleared IAS last year in the service. So he was the one who led me to this place, and coming here has been a really huge milestone for me, because having no understanding of the mains examination whatsoever, I was able to pick up really quickly here. Plus I also found another mentor for my English literature preparation, Radhakrishnan sir. He is teaching at the Service Academy, Kerala Civil Service Academy, and both these mentors have really critical roles in kind of making me up to speed. But I think coming here was the most important decision that I took during that time.
Okay. So now coming to the mains preparation. I think as far as mains is concerned, you know, students these days, they are overburdened by this information overload. There are so many sources, there are so many different sources. We have online sources, we have printed sources. So how did you tone down your reference materials?
So truth be told, I came here with no idea of what mains is, right?
Okay.
So then I started doing my research of how people clear mains and all that, and people had like million sources, and I was very confused. But after coming here, Mahesh sir, my mentor, told me one thing: Anjali, prelims is testing your knowledge, but mains is testing your understanding and analysis of the knowledge that you already have. So don't study anything completely new, just go revise whatever you did not and continue reading the paper. Meanwhile, we'll do your answers and we'll figure out what's wrong and what's right. So that's what's, I think, eased me of the pain of going through all the sources, because I cut it down to newspaper, and then I stuck to newspaper, making like compilations of what came in the paper relevant to GS1 being a pile, another one GS2 being a pile. So my sister was the one who was cutting all this. So that time she used to joke, you should give me salary for this, because she used to cut it out for me. So that means, as in for mains, that pile of newspapers has been really important as the source. Other than that, I don't think I have done many things except for economic survey and a few other things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now coming to answer writing, how did you get acquainted with that, and how did you manage writing? Because writing in that short span of time, as far as 2.5 hours is concerned for civil services, it's really a short span of time.
That's true.
So how did you manage that? Your time management, that's what I meant.
What I struggled the most with was time management, to be told, because I'm usually a person, I used to think of myself as somebody who likes to write, or somebody who writes a lot. But those kind of creative writing is very different from what is expected of you in mains examination. This is not an understanding that you get over a day. So I came here and I used to write my answers, and my first few answers when I showed to my mentors, what they said is, this is not the requirement of the exam. Let's just tell you how it works. And then they told me a structure called the introduction, and then coming to a content, and then a small conclusion. So this was not my idea of the exam.
Okay.
So that's the time I picked it up, and then I joined for the mains answer writing course here, and every week we had one exam or the other. So my idea was, between the exam I used to come here every single day and then write one answer 10 times if it is required, until I got like a green flag from my mentors. So truth be told, I struggled with time management in the beginning, but towards the ending, the last month is when I focused on cutting down the time. Cutting down the time is basically cutting down content that is not critical for the answer. So by the end, I started thinking while I was writing, is this sentence really necessary for this answer to be important? So I started curtailing information like that and became a very brief format, and I think that kind of worked out.
Okay, was content development a difficult task?
Honestly, content development is something I think that evolves over time, because when you prepare for so many prelims and keep failing, I think you pick up content over time. But having said that, after prelims I have not developed a lot of new content. I have just revised what I have done for prelims. But what I did, something additional, was go through papers, things like economic survey summary or some graph or the other, or a pie diagram of the economy of India, so that I could use these graphs and diagrams and India maps and all these somewhere in the answers. So I think in the end, when I counted on retrospect, when I counted the number of figures and diagrams I used for the answers, I figured out that almost 50% of the answers had something that is additional in it. So that's the only difference. Yeah.
Okay, what was the style of writing you imbibed? Was it paragraph writing? Was it bullet points? You know, we hear different opinions as far as how to write an answer is
That's
concerned.
true.
That's why.
So even I have seen like YouTube videos of many people saying that this is the format that should be followed, or this is the format should be followed. But I think it's very personal. It evolves over time. For me, earlier it was just introduction, paragraph, content, and then conclusion. Then I changed it to subheadings. As in, introduction was just 2 lines, conclusion was 2 lines. Then I added something called future or way forward, or some suggestion for the future in that particular context. And then later on I split the content into different parts, as in pros and cons and something, or global, India and local, or something like that. And then later on I added things like maps that are relevant to the question. So when I split the content into subheadings, each subheading had maybe 3 or 4 points, not more than that. So for every subheading or every question, there could be one question, one map that could be relevant from your prelims preparation, which I kind of tried to add into this. And questions with economy also demand a certain analytical understanding. So what I did was, on the right side of the paper, I had like some space for every economics answer, where I left for adding graphs or diagrams or something like that. So I think that addition was very, very incremental. I started with very basic format. I added it, and eventually I added government schemes and all that kind of that people usually read for prelims. So I went and revised that, incorporated that. Then I went and read international affairs once again, and tried to include those examples in my answers. So I think the progress was very, very incremental. It didn't happen overnight.
Okay, now coming to your optional subject, it was English. So what was the reason behind choosing English? Is it your a subject you're passionate about, something like that?
I completely agree. I think that optional is something you spend some, I don't know, 500 hours or more than that over it. So, and I was working also, and when I was choosing the subject, I did not have the plan of taking a break or taking leave and then studying or any of that. So I thought whatever I study, I should enjoy, and I went with my heart. But I had this fear that if an engineer takes English literature optional and gives civil service exam, it's very unlikely to kind of clear and sail through. But I met a senior of mine, Shafiq sir, who is presently an IRS officer. He was also an engineer who was working, who took English literature and cleared, and that was a huge motivation. And the next year, Hamna also cleared with English literature. So then I went by what my heart really wanted, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading English literature for the preparation. It was really the best part of my day.
Okay, so how was your English preparation, the strategy, the coaching you took?
Earlier I did not have any coaching in English literature, and I used to just like reading. So I used to keep mailing Shafiq sir, and then later Hamna and another friend Arvind. So these people used to keep telling me what is expected of an English literature answer in UPSC. So then I started reading all these novels by myself, the first hand reading that you have, fresh. So I started looking at the pointers that are important for civil service in general, like what does the time period look like, or how does the value system in that time period relevant to the present, or how can you compare, or how do you compare between two works in a very socio-political context. So these are fine things that you observe only if you are preparing for civil service and reading the book. Because otherwise you generally follow the plot and follow the story and read it for the aesthetic pleasure of it. So I just changed the way I looked at the same book that I did before, that I read for fun. So this change in perspective was my beginning, and once I completed, say, most of the novels and some poetries, for the poetries I went through many online blogs and made like a one-page summary of all poetries. There are around 60 poems to study in the syllabus and 14 novels. And it's very defined, unlike what people think. English literature is a very defined small syllabus. So I covered all the poems. I went through multiple blogs to get an understanding of the same poem, and I added my own understanding to it, and I made one-page summaries of all. So by the end, when I was coming to Trivandrum, I had all the novels read and I had one-page summaries of all the poems. So After coming here, I found Radhakrishnan sir, KG Radhakrishnan sir, and then we had sessions around 100 hours of classes in those 3 months, during which I understood how a literature student understands the subject, or what is the expectation from a literature student. So then I added critical appreciation and all that. The last bit was to actually go back to my beginning. My beginning was going through 10 years of English literature question papers.
Okay.
So then I had already divided that into works, as in I had added which all questions have come from which all works, and I had that as a 1-page summary again. So I took these pages and wrote the answers and sent it to people like Hamna, and I gave it to Radhakrishnan sir, I sent it to Shafiq, I sent it to Aravind. So all these people gave me a lot of feedback, and I came back to Mahesh sir and showed whether this is the expectation from a UPSC answer. So a lot of people have been critical to the preparation, but having said that, I think the main source of reference was going through all the question papers in the previous years, because a lot of repetition does happen, and already knowing that what my structure of answer should look like. It should have a conclusion, it should have an introduction, it should have your own context, your understanding of the question, it should have it could have some comparison of some work that you read for fun some other time. So when you bring in all those elements, it becomes a very original answer, and I'm hoping that it did work.
Okay. So would you suggest English as an optional subject to other fellow aspirants?
Only if you really like reading and literature in general.
Because there's this general notion that literature subjects, especially when it comes to English literature,
it's not a difficult one. It's not a difficult syllabus to cover, because it's very defined. It's 14 novels, 5 plays, 60 poems, that are very small poems, most of them are small, and then some understanding of history of literature. So anybody who can put in, like, say 5 hours of time, that's the time I took to cover it, say 4 or 5 hours of time over the course of 2 or 3 months, can reasonably clear English literature, provided he or she has an interest in reading in general.
So your optional preparation was clubbed with your mains preparation?
Yeah, so my optional preparation started way earlier.
Okay.
I read the novels and plays and everything earlier, and then came to Trivandrum with my own idea of summaries. So I came that and added whatever I got from here from Radhakrishnan sir to what I already had. And then Hamna, who is presently an IFS officer, had unconditionally helped me by telling me how she cleared it. So that really mattered. So I think all those pieces together made the whole picture.
Okay. So now coming to the third level of the exam, that is interview. So definitely you must have taken a lot of mock interviews before facing the actual board. So how far did the mock interviews help you?
Mock interviews, they call it the personality test.
Yeah.
So I believe that they test your personality,
Yeah.
even if you're not very knowledgeable or say very impressive on the first time. So what I found difficult was to pinpoint my own flaws, because most of us do think that we have certain strengths and certain weaknesses, and sometimes we may not be sure of which is right and which is not. So somebody else who might actually know you better, maybe a friend or a mentor. For me, it was a mentor. I came here to Mahesh sir, had a one-on-one, and then I had also met a couple of other teachers like Gopal Krishnan sir, had one-on-ones where they gave me an idea of what my possible flaws could be, where I could modify the way I speak, or I could modify how I communicate. So all these things were my homework material. So I took these material, went back to Bangalore, I was working as well, and I used to think about it constantly about I should change this particular aspect of how I speak or how I respond to things. And then I came back and I gave around 3 mock interviews. And my first interview was not really good. I got a lot of feedback, I worked on it. My second interview was better, and my third one was at ENLITE. That was the last one as well. So that also went really well, and I was relatively okay. But the actual interview was something very similar to my last mock interview, fortunately. But at the same time, it was extremely random. So I think that end of the day, it does test your personality or your nature.
Okay. And now finally coming to the fact that prelims is just 1 month away. You know, the Civil Services 2000 exam is going to start in a month. So what is your message to me and other fellow aspirants?
For people who are preparing since some time, I totally understand that I have gone through that shoes last year, and I have faced way too many failures in prelims. 2 times I failed. So in prelims, it's after all a lot of things. It's a little luck, and a lot of work that accumulates over the years. You cannot really say that you were studying just for a single day and then you cleared prelims. It never happens, right? So be ready to fail, but while you go at it, go all in.
Okay.
Do, if it's possible for you, the difference that made me clear it this time and not the other was doing some 50 test papers and solving it. I've done test papers that I could my hands on everywhere, so I did it online. I asked people to send it over for me. A lot of people helped me during that stage in getting me sources because I was working, right?
Okay.
So I think solving the question papers and going through it again and again and revising what you already know that you have studied before, I think are critical to prelims.
And finally, this outstanding success of yours, which is, there is no comparison to that, because come on, it's one of the most difficult and unpredictable exams we have in the nation. So who would you like to dedicate this success to?
It's a combination of people, because a lot of people have been so important in my preparation. So I would like to dedicate it to my family, friends and mentors. Because even after coming to ENLITE, or even before that, I had a lot of people who have been offering me support even from very far away, even through phone calls. So I'm very, very grateful for all of that.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with us. And yeah, keep making us proud.
Thank you so much.